feel like I just needed a little bit of direction or some goals to get me back on track. And so he says, "Hey kiddo, you want to come back to the pizza parlor and I'll make you a assistant manager." And to me it was like, I would love to follow my dad's footsteps. He's my hero.
Mm.
And so it took me from kind of just like, floundering through a couple college credits and working at a donut shop, which, was cool too, because it was a friend that kind of helped me out with a job there. That, but going back to work for my dad, you're stuck with some responsibility and adulthood. And, there's, 40, 50 employees that rely on you being there and,
Right.
and making sure that things get paid and the doors get open and the lights stay on and things get ordered. People are held accountable for, their actions as well. And so then that turned into managing. And so then, managing a restaurant was a great experience. It ultimately wasn't for me. I always felt like there's this calling to pursue something else. And while I was going to college, I was looking at maybe being a forestry ranger. It's like, oh, you get to drive around in the forestry truck and be around trees. That sounds pretty awesome. Or,
Right.
Look at creeks and walk around the woods and people will pay you for that. That sounds pretty awesome. But that's kind of a kid pipe dream, really. But the cool part is that there was, I remember back in first grade, they had us all like paint these pictures of what you wanted to be when you grow up. And
Right.
I painted this police officer with a big badge on the chest. And I don't know, that always kind of stuck with me, that kind of helper, that kind of server, that kind of symbol of a protector, that always appealed to me, and even being a middle child and just always feeling that protector role. That was always something that appealed to me. I felt called to, and a friend of my dad's, John, had mentioned, "Hey, you should think about being a reserve deputy sheriff." And I turned 21 years old. So managing the pizza parlor, and I had met my now wife, and we were seeing each other. And so going from pizza to being a reserve deputy sheriff is what the next step was. So when I turned 21, I got my first Silver Star badge from the Josephine County Sheriff's Office. It was like the proudest moment of my life. I was so stoked, and I didn't want to take that uniform off ever. I wanted to wear it to bed. I mean, it's just so, and it wasn't not like a power trip, Ken. You know what I mean? It's just like there's this, it's like magic. It was like, oh my gosh, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. And like listening to the radio and just being a goofball, just Paul Blart, basically, just loving it. And and I couldn't get enough. I came in for ride-alongs, 2-3 days a week. I worked every detail, every hour I could. And I remember Dan Schramm and I would work like 16-hour volunteer shifts, and the sergeant's like, "You guys are still here? You need to go home." Just stuff like that. And we had a good crew of like Ryan Brown and Jimmy Geiger, and there was several great reserves that came through, and Skippy, and it was a really cool crew. And we looked up to those regulars, and ultimately it was about a year later, I got hired on as a patrol deputy. They let me do the full-time patrol slot to fill in for patrol when they were shorthanded as a reserve deputy. So I was actually working patrol and handling calls as a reserve, as a solo deputy at 21, before I even went to the academy or anything like that, for a long time. So I was working for Ken Seelig. And, yeah, he got me lined out with how to do the job.
So during your reserve time, were you still working the pizza place? And
yeah.
So obviously you didn't wear your uniform to the pizza place and stuff like that, right?
Well, you know what? I'm sure I did. I'm sure, I had a key to the place. So when you work graveyard, you can just pop on in and make yourself a pizza. And once the rest of the little piggies know that you have a key to a pizza parlor too, you're gonna make all kinds of friends. So we've been making pizzas, and there was several feasts to be had after closing with the boys in brown back in the day.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah, it was cool.
So you're a deputy sheriff, you're a reserve, but you're pretty much full time. and still working at a pizza place.
Yep.
And so what happened? I mean, at some point you got hired on full time, and
Yes. So yeah, it was a year, a couple months later, at 22 years old, they had a full-time position that I took, and it was around that time there was a few other reserves that were hired, and I'd put in for it, and I didn't make it a couple times through the hiring process because where I went, where I lost the competition on the hiring was a typing test.
Oh,
They
really?
had this type. You had to show some typing proficiency, and I remember in school going, "I'm not going to type. That's stupid,"
And
or
yeah.
I have a pen. Why would I need to type? Yeah. So there was these family friends of ours, Larry and Cecilia. They said, "Hey, listen, I don't even have a computer, right?" So Larry and Cecilia like, "Listen, we have a computer. We have a typing tutor program called Mavis Beacon, and you can come over to our house and when we're not there and use our typing tutor anytime you want." So they let me go in their house, let me use their computer and use this typing tutor.
Learn how to
And
type.
I knocked it out and got it done. And then, so the next time it was like a couple months later, there was a hiring process, and got the job. Brian Anderson hired me with Sheriff Calvert, and went to work as a full-time deputy at 22, and then off to the academy. And I worked, the Cave Junction and swing shift, graveyard shift, day shift. A lot of great mentors and deputies and sergeants there, and had a great time. It wasn't long later, and they had a detective opening the following year and 3 months after I got hired. And I was approached by one of the senior detectives, Fred, and he had actually asked me to put in for it. And that's just nuts, to think,
Right.
like, I'm just learning like how to,
Year and a half old here.
I'm just figuring it, and I'm still young, not just like, I didn't bring any life experience other than making pizza to this table, so.
And swimming and shaving, it's fine.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's that. So, which actually paid off, but at any rate, in retrospect, it wasn't that they were looking for my experience or qualifications. They were looking for somebody that was trainable.
Right.
And that they wanted to invest into. And so I was just a sponge. So I just went in there and became, 23-year-old detective. And that's kind of crazy. And what it was I got to work with a lot of veterans that were towards the tail end of their careers, essentially, but learn a lot real fast. Became a deputy medical examiner, and went out to tons of scenes, brutal crime scenes, murder scenes, multiple murder scenes, officer involved shootings. I mean, all these things that you get exposed to at a very early age. And then working for some great minds, some tenacious investigators, and really humble people. Another thing about Fred, I'll tell you, is he invited me to go to church.
Yeah.
And we weren't going to church. We weren't walking with the Lord. And
you and your wife, you mean?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then fiance, actually, and playing house. And it was because of his invite and persistence that we started going to church.
Uh-huh.
And you know how there's different people that water the seed along the way.
Right.
No one person's taking credit for this or that. It's God's work, right? But
sure.
But he was definitely one of those guys that had a strong influence on my walk, and so I would give a big shout out to Fred.
That's cool.
Yeah, Freddie Barbero. So, yeah, and wasn't long after I'm in detectives. Lots of great cases, getting a big head, right? Like starting to think, here I come to save the day.
Just building.
Like, here's Ryan Brown, out here working graveyard, solving a home invasion robbery by himself, and I'll come in and take over the scene and take credit for it. I was like, just stupid young detective stuff. And
right.
Those are the things that you look back on and go, there are no individuals ever. It's all teams.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm sitting at my retirement, speech someday, it's just going to be hours and hours of credits,
Sure.
I got nothing to say. It's just credits,
Like one of those
I'm
movies,
not on it.
one of
Yes.
the movies that just has just people,
Yep.
and it took millions of people to
Yep.
make this happen. And
Yep. So Ryan was one of those guys where he would work behind the scenes to make you look better. He would do the sweat, he would do the blood, he would do the tears, he would do those things and never take any credit for it.
He still does that today. That is his thing. He will.
Yep.
He'll bust your balls in front of your face.
Yeah.
But behind the scenes, he is just building you up, and he's
I know it.
on a huge pedestal.
Yeah. So there's a lot of those guys, but Ryan is one that I've been close with for a long time, and I hold him as a hero.
Yeah, I do too. He's not on the show, but he.
Yeah, of course not.
Yeah, that's just him. But so you're a detective. You got this giant ego. You're going through this whole thing at 22, 23 years old.
Yep.
And you think you're hot stuff,
right?
And then what happened?
And then layoffs.
Yeah. So
they say you're going to be laid off. Here's pink slip. And so here I had, a take-home car, a desk, these business cards. It's like, oh, I've arrived. It's like,
right.
This is legit. And such a knucklehead. And I get laid off, and I'm going to lose a job. Well, a few people in the community had ponied up enough money to keep another couple positions working, like the courier kept a contract position going. And I was able to be displaced into the jail. So they kept my job at the sheriff's office, but I had to work in the jail as a corrections deputy.
Right.
And so that was a good experience to work alongside corrections staff, to see what they do, to see at the time, I think, there was, of all the people in the jail, I either was the officer that arrested or assisted with arresting like 25% of the staff that were, or the not the staff, I'm sorry, the inmates that were in there. And so while I had always been taught and did my best to treat people with dignity and treat them fairly, and you could see somebody out on the street and they'd say, hey, you treated me fairly. That's a goal even today.
Sure.
It's a weird spot to be in, where you're working in the jail, bringing toilet paper, newspapers, meds, just a cart of, here's supplies for you, to somebody that you put in there for robbery and multiple counts of burglary and all kinds of other serious stuff.
Right. And sometimes they can't be honest with themselves to be like, yeah, this is my fault. I'm in here because of a reason. But
more than sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. More often than not, they're like, I hate you. You ruined my life, all this different stuff. And you're like, I was just doing my job, and and nothing, honestly, it's nothing personal. But then, like you said, you can get that person that comes back like, what, you treated me fair. And out of all these people, I respect you for what you did. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That's awesome. So.
Yeah, I know you do that as well.
Like, yeah, I guess I try. Sometimes
you do more than try. You're humble. So that lasted 3.5 months in the jail.
Yeah.
And Brian Anderson, our lieutenant, let me know that, hey, we got some funding and we'll get you back in detectives. And that essentially kept me from leaving at that time to go jump ship over to Grants Pass, PD, DPS. And so I stayed at detectives, and what that transpired into was an opening on the narcotics unit that soon opened up. So it was coming up on 2001, about 25-ish, and the narcotics team was really appealing to me because they were always busy. They're doing multiple warrants a week at times. Meth was huge. They were out working all the time. They had all the cool stuff, all the cool gear. They had mullets and fanny packs and t-shirts, and it was a multi-agency team. So you had state and city and county and probation, and DEA, and they worked pretty closely with the district attorney's office with a sole prosecutor assigned to the team.
Right. And was this the late 90s or is this early 2000s or?
So by the time it was narcotics, it was 2001.
Okay.
So joined the team with Rich Evans and Pete Janista and Dave Raymond, and our sergeant was Carol Hoffman. And one thing about Carol Hoffman is that he wasn't gonna be like the most polished gentleman in the room, certainly, but he was going to be the hardest worker and sergeant, like a true servant leader. He was an example of a servant leader. I'd worked for a mentor leader before that with Ken Seelig. Mm-hmm. And Carol was certainly a servant leader. And I had also worked for a good pastor who was very much a mentor leader as well. But I'm taking leadership notes as I'm going along from these folks, and take the good stuff. And Carol would sweat, Carol Huffman, with you and work the hours with you. And I'm also working with Rich and Pete. Uh-huh. And Pete, speaking of mentor, Pete.
Yeah.
He's a guy that I look up to as a husband, uh-huh, as a dad, and a police professional.
Right.
I mean, he genuinely loves people, loves his family first, of course, but he is a servant of man. Oh, he's a servant of the public, and his manner of putting others first really was a compass, right, for how to be and how to grow. Rich was a strong personality that would admonish you in front of you and call you out, but like a brother should, because he would expect the same treatment. And right, so there was a big, strong brother presence, and then there was compassionate Pete, but we're still kicking doors in together, right, and having fun. And working with Ryan and working with Sean and working with Dave and all these other guys, we formed a pretty tight team of kicking doors in. At least once a week. We busted 200 meth labs in 4 or 5 years time. We're busting marijuana grows back. Remember when marijuana was illegal back in those days, and there was, people go to prison for delivering controlled substances.
Right.
Yeah, those were the days. It was a lot of fun. I think it was good tactical experience, but it was good teamwork experience, like I mentioned.
Right.
Team sports and growing up, the joint team was another team sport that I got to be on. It was cool. Certainly, more serious stakes, but so it was a great team.
Really quick, I wanted to touch on your I guess your review of Pete. He's that guy. When I was on FTEP and I was getting ready to get cut loose, I was on my shadow phase, and my trainer had gotten sick. And he was just sick, and so they didn't have another FTO for me to have. Mm-hmm. And so I was told, so you're going to be shadow by yourself. Pete is your beat partner. Pete is going to be, you got questions, you just call Pete. You just ask him. He's going to kind of follow you around from call to call. And so I said, oh, okay, cool. So I go and I'm doing this stuff, and I'm a policeman. I'm a full-time policeman, and I'm on my own. I'm in the car by myself. But I knew I had Pete right there, and he was going to the calls with me and stuff like that. And then it kind of morphed into the day where he was later in the day. I'd hear him on the radio. He's on a call, and then I'd get dispatched to something else. So as the time kind of went on, he was no longer shadowing me. He had his own job to do. And I was like, well, how come, why am I, hey, what do I do? And so I'd call Pete. He's like, you got it. You're fine. Just do that. No, you're good. And and I was just like, what am I doing? I'm supposed to be this, I'm a copper, but I don't know anything. And Pete was he's that guy that,
yep. Like, chill out.
You good. You got this. And so, no, I agree with you. He was one of those guys that just, he was, he showed you kind of how to be one outside of work, but also how to be inside of work. He would be that guy that would talk somebody into, filing a report. They say, hey, my kid stole my car or whatever, kids on drugs or whatever. And but I don't know if I don't really want to pursue charges. And he'd be like, yeah, you do. Yeah. And he would talk them into him having a report now. I mean, he would go out of his way to get people to
Yeah.
To make sure that the right thing happened. So no, I agree with your assessment of Pete. He's a top-notch guy. So
Yeah, I think another thing about Pete is when you work on the drug task force and you're working some street, big crimes, but you're working street level crimes too. You deal with some of the same names over and over again.
right.
And there was definitely a relationship you get as a police detective in narcotics with the addict, and it gets to be where it's not just crime and punishment, or supply and demand. It's these are human beings,
Right.
moms and dads.
Right.
Their kids know you, and they remember you from kicking the doors in. So if you can ease that blow, by familiarizing themselves with the families and being human, and handing out stickers and stuffed animals, and finding other ways to deal with things. But Pete was one of those ones where he developed relationships with people in drug court, and following up with people and going to their drug court graduations, and
right.
making sure that he followed up with people to make sure that it wasn't just a band-aid of putting somebody in jail. It was like, no, we want you to kick this addiction and get clean, because there's better life to be had out there. And it was kind of the first glimpse of like, yeah, this is possible, where it's like you see so much negative and you start to just kind of compartmentalize and do the job in front of you. He kept it human, and that was a really cool model to see the human side of that influenced me moving forward.
Right. It's probably the third or fourth podcast in a row that I have that term has come up, that develop a relationship with people, whether it's, I've talked to a bunch of teachers, and, they're doing it with their students, or we're doing it with other police officers or whomever, or with dispatchers and all this different stuff. Everybody develops relationships, and that is the number one thing. And you were talking about leadership and how you developed and learned about leadership. And I think that is one of the biggest things, is you got to develop a relationship with somebody. If you're going to have any kind of say in their life, if they're going to listen to anything you say. Otherwise, like you said, it's just going to be a Band-Aid that you're going to be putting on. You're just putting on this thing for the time being, and there's never going to be a fix. But eventually, if you develop that relationship, you can grow into actually saying, hey man, you shouldn't do that. It's not, one, it's not healthy. Two, it's not healthy. And three, it's not healthy, for everybody involved, for you, for your family, for your friends, for society, for your community. And then they start realizing, okay, this guy, he's been cool with me every time so far. He and I developed a relationship. I see what he's saying, and they're going to start listening to you. So that relationship development really makes a difference, and not just in dealing with people who are committing crimes, but you're dealing with, people you work with, or the people you live with, or the people you're on the same planet with. So
right. No, for sure. And I think showing people that they're as good as anyone, that you are no better than them, and that they're worthy. I know it sounds a little cheesy, but you hold yourself in no higher regard than anyone else.
Right.
And people see that genuine sincerity, and it takes time and consistency, but it's a real thing, and it's effective. So Pete was a great role model for that, in that regard. And then around the same time, I got married. Some young narcotics detective, burning the candle at both ends, working 80 hours a week, or I don't really understand that we're shoveling sand on the beach, but to me at the time, we're taking all drugs off the face of the earth, and there will be no more drugs ever to exist, and the world will be better, and kids will be safer, and people will be healthier, and our communities will be cleaner, and crime will go down, because we all know all crime is caused by drugs, and that it's not really what worked out. But we did our job at that time. We did what we were asked to do, and we carried the torch for that season, and we did the very best we could. We won the narcotics unit of the year from the ONEA in the state during that time frame, and we did a good job. There was just a couple years had gone by. We worked some big cases. I got to work with DEA task force and work as a DEA task force agent, case specific, and work some what they call OSDAF or HIDA cases, and some higher target cases, and working big, large conspiracies that are, where you actually put a year into it, and you're, putting a lot of work into stuff.
And when you deliver your report, it looks like a copy of War and Peace or something, huh?
Yeah, seriously, 7 4-inch binders, and drop that on Doug Fong's desk and say, "Here you go."
Right.
And then, and when you say, "See you later" to the defendant, it may not be true because their parole officer may not even be born yet.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
And you may not even be in the same career anymore.
Yeah. So there was a great experience there too, and I worked with some great folks over at the Medford office, and that was a cool time. Working with some great people. I worked closely with Ryan from pretty much from then on, and a few other greats, and then at some point I started to see the writing on the wall for the county and their funding, the infrastructure, the likelihood of another layoff, the fact that I was working. I remember I'm doing like these big drug buys, traveling all over the place, different cities, going to just up and down kind of the I-5 corridor where we worked, and going from, oh yeah, we remember we had this baby boy, and now he's crawling, and now he's walking, and now he's swimming, and it's like these little benchmarks of things he's doing, and it's like, hey, he's gone like bigger and taller like every time I get to see him, it seems like, and I'm missing too much.
Right.
And I don't want to be the narcotics detective as an identity. I want to be a husband and a dad, as an identity, like Pete showed me, like my dad showed me. And so with the funding coming up, as there's going to be likely layoffs, with the recognition of some reflection of what the priorities are, I applied to Grants Pass to jump ship. You go across the hall and you make $1,000 more a month, and that was the asinine thing about it. Doing basically the same job. It's just, it wasn't for the money. It was for, I could basically make the same amount of money, but not have to work the overtime. But it was also job security, and I certainly missed and still miss, the adrenaline of kicking doors and flying in helicopters and doing low crawls with night vision and camouflage, painted faces and cool stuff like that. But so you go jump ship over to city, and I knew all the people because I worked with them, because they would come along and do drug raids with us, be uniform presence on our drug raids.
Right. Like you said, they're across the hall. So they were pretty much in the same justice building. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know all those players, and they're just basically, you went from cousins to brothers at that point. And but what you do is when you do jump ship, you start over. Your seniority means nothing. Really what you did, it's like, yeah, it's cool, but you're the low guy, new car, or new shift, and probably graveyard, and that's where you end up, is you go back to the bottom of the barrel. But it didn't bother me. I just it was something that you kind of just face and you deal with. But there's that Woody Hayes quote that says, "Nothing cleanses your soul like getting the hell kicked out of you." That was just one of those moments. Like, you just need a humbling,
Yeah, you need to humble
in life.
Exactly.
Yes. And so, you can think you're pretty much a hot dog, but every once in a while you get kicked down a rung or two, and I did, and it was like, I enjoyed it. It was cool. I like that. Like in karate, when you get kicked in the face and you just kind of smile, you're like, okay, that's okay. That's good. Like Jocko says, good.
It's funny. I was just talking with Tony and on the last episode, and he was saying that same thing, that you would get to that point where you knock each other out and you get some war wounds or whatever. And at the end of the time, you're closer with the person that did it because you both are building each other up, and so
yeah,
that's it totally makes sense what you're saying. So
oh, for sure. Yeah, I still got these ribs from Robert over here,
oh
and
yeah,
I just love it. It's just you hug a guy after he gives a spinning kick and breaks two ribs, and just like, that's the way it goes.
that's what would
Love
happen.
it. Battle on.
Yeah.
So yeah, jump over to the city, and I'm working there, and so now you're taking detective experience to the street as a patrol cop, which was different than the first go around as a patrol cop because you just kind of, drinking through a fire hose.
Right.
Now it's like I know search and seizure, and I know drugs, and I know how to take a traffic stop into a living room for a search warrant and roll that guy and roll that guy and roll that guy. Next thing you know, it's like make some pretty big cases, but it's having some fun with that and doing a lot of teamwork stuff and working together with some great folks. And then they had an opening in detectives over at Grants Pass about a year after I started there, and threw my name in the hat for that, and we got that assignment. And so it wasn't long, I was back in detectives again in the major crime unit. And so after got put in there, now this is back for those of you PD folks that didn't get the opportunity to work in the old office. You're basically these tiny little cubicles stacked on next to a tiny little cubicle stacked to a tiny little next cubicle, which is basically a hallway for everybody else to walk through.
Yep.
Meanwhile, the sergeant's inside a closet, and the interview room's the only room that has place where you can actually sit down and move around. And it was tight quarters, but we loved it. We were family. We had awesome crew back there. I get to work with Gunderson and Brissett. It was just legendary detective personalities at the time.
Right.
And it was working the sex crime assignment for the majority. And I kind of took on, kind of whatever was left. At that time, Archie was working narcotics, and then as people would move on and retire and rotate, different people came onto the team, and then I was working with Dennis and Archie and Ryan. And so that team right there, we were unstoppable. So you had Enda, Archie, Ryan, and Dennis running the show, and of course I always felt like Paul was part of the team too, because he probably took on the receiving end of thousands of items of evidence every time we left the office. So he was awesome hard worker, just an absolute great teammate. And then Linda was our analyst. She's part of the team too. She's our sister that was behind the scenes doing all the analyst work and putting together a lot of the information and intel and things that behind the scenes work. But like I said, Ryan would be the guy that's listening to jail phone calls for your case, or he'd write a search warrant for your case and take no credit for an arrest, with your name on it.
Right.
I'd go to a trial and testify for an hour, and he'd be up there for 3 hours doing most of the work. And it was just like, oh yeah,
witness.
You look what Mikey did, another great case. I was like, I don't know, I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
And I think about like some of the coolest, biggest cases that I, in like a detective bio, you'd look at it like, oh, you did these murders and they were a big deal, or they were really cool. It's like I'm like Peter Sellers, and being there, it's just like I was just doing, my thing, and I don't know. You thought I was doing great police work, but I was just there.
I just trying to figure out what I was supposed to do. Yeah.
Like Archie's, like some of the things he would see and do with his interview skills of body language, like he would know a confession before somebody opened their mouth just by their body language. And that's something that skilled detectives certainly develop, but you would put him in the realm of, pushing expert, for that skill set. And is pretty good to have alongside you during an interview.
Yeah. So for those of you that are listening and were like, oh, Archie we showcased him a couple episodes ago. And so you want to figure out like, oh, this guy was this in Pittsburgh and blah, blah, blah. Now, this guy knew his policing. He knew how to be a cop, and he knew how to interview people and talk to people and go beyond interview. And well, it would go beyond interview, become an interrogation, and turn back into an interview, and then make the person think that they were having an interview with him as opposed to he was having an interview with them. I mean, he could swip that thing around pretty quick and pretty easy. It's like you said, master level.
So. Yeah, and he's not looking to get a confession. He's looking to change somebody's life for the better.
Right.
He's serious.
And once again, trying to develop relationships, because like,
yes,
we mentioned it. I said, I remember seeing him give, have books, handing out these books to these people. Hey man, read this. This is good. This is good for you. And you're going to, whether they do it or not, it's up to them. It's another story, but so, yeah. Yep. So you're back there, you're being a detective, you're doing all the things that you need to do that you feel are fulfilling to you. You got, you're spending more time at home now, but you're still getting to do the same job you were doing before, but you're doing all the same things.
Yeah.
I seem to remember a story back when you were on patrol, and you kind of took some of the tactics that you did out in the county where you had very little oversight, and you brought some of these tactics into the city that had there was quite a bit of oversight. And and so some things kind of come up. And so the way that I remember hearing the story was that it had something to do with driving backwards, going the wrong way on a one-way street with your gun hanging out the window, something along those lines.
Yeah. Okay. So that would be my brother, Josh, that told you that story. And he's my SWAT dog. So yeah, that would be a county tactic for sure. Going the wrong way, perhaps. I wasn't going backwards. I was actually driving forwards rapidly. For the record, an officer was out with a couple felons. One was running and the other was with another and couldn't be reached on the radio. So you go into a different level of break the rules at times when somebody's in your head fighting for their life,
Right.
So anyways, I ended up catching a guy that was running away from one of the officers, probably Josh. And it's not hard to run away from Josh, when you got.
He's taller than me. It's fine.
I won't say it then.
So
you got ankle hair slowing him down.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that's just the thing, you hear these stories and you're like, what is now? I don't subscribe to doing this. I don't say, hey, go out and try the stuff that Mike's done, because there are some people that are able to get away with things. There's a time and a place for things. And back then in the early 2000s, you could do some things that you can't do now. There's just a different world. And there wasn't a I'm trying to skirt the issues or skirt the rules or anything like that. There was, I'm trying to do good, and I'm trying to make sure the right thing is happening. And so, but it's always funny when it comes out and it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you did that. Yeah. I can't believe I did that either, looking back on it. But at the time, it was absolutely normal, so.
Yeah, it was normal. Hey, it was like midnight. There's no cars out. The backstop was clear. There's no excuse for that. And you know what? Back then, the sergeant said, don't do that again.
Right. As the sergeant now, what would you say?
Me personally?
Yeah.
Don't do that again.
Don't do that again. I got to make a phone call. Don't do that again.
No, I think there's a certain amount of wisdom of knowing the repercussions and the dynamics and the repeat offenders, and if you're getting through to somebody or not. If it's an educational piece and
right.
what makes that person tick, and so everybody's different, but you certainly must be fair and consistent. But if there's something you can do without breaking somebody's spirit, I definitely encourage that.
Right.
Right. But Guardian has been the way for most everything anymore. Exactly. But that's just a accountability tracking for
right
policy violations.
And I think it's good. We all have to learn the lessons. We're all young, gung ho at some point, and when you get to learn those lessons and you get to determine what's right and wrong and who you are, and luckily get to go through, or blessedly go through, those experiences, and nobody's hurt and nobody's none the worse for wear, and person that has committed crime A gets to go to jail, and person that committed crime B gets to also go to jail, and there's all these things, but hopefully, like we said, you develop that you can kind of develop a relationship, or at least try to do good because you want to see somebody not do those things again, and not so much just get punished, but just become a better member of society.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
So and it was fun.
That's cool. That's cool. So you're working in detectives, you're doing all that stuff like that, and you were going to write out your career there, I'm assuming, at least in your mind, right?
Yeah, I had my daughter, so our second came along after our son, and soon, we were expecting our third, and I was at this point the senior major crimes detective. Dennis had rotated out and Dan had rotated in. We were still kicking butt and having fun. Things were great. Happy with my family life. Work's going good. I mean, I was doing SWAT for years, and that was a fun thing, being a ATL on the team and working with Jim and Josh and Tony and all these great brothers and Skippy and guys on the SWAT team, and the rest of you know who you are, but awesome team. There's like very, very little closeness to that team sport feeling of SWAT as well.
Right.
And granted, in our town at that time, we did more training than we had call outs, and I think that's a good problem to have for a city, right? But
right. Yeah, that is.
But it was excellent training, and the level of skill was absolutely very high, and it made us better human beings, made us better officers. It was fun. So family's good, church life's good, home group, is part of the normal routine, and got some great, awesome people that we're meeting with. I had a men's fellowship group. We'd meet once a week for coffee. Steve
right.
Berman come down and meet us, and Fred. And when I talk to Fred, I'm calling Fred Sada, our chaplains at the
right.
time.
Yeah.
A few regulars come down there, and it was just kind of an awesome routine. Hit Club Northwest in the morning, work out, go to work, doing major crime stuff, do some SWAT training, hit fellowship stuff. Go out and throw the ball with the kid and enjoy life. And we had at this point started to go down a season of trials and tribulations,
right,
that built up basically if you were to say, like, here's the cornerstones of my testimony, this is the season we're walking into at this point.
So you're, and I think during this time you were, when I had Steve on the podcast, we talked about a SIDS death that we had. And during this time, and I don't know if that really had any, had a bearing on you in any way or whatever, but this was my first SIDS death. I was on training, and Steve was the chaplain that had gone to this, and you were the detective that was right there. And you actually asked me to do a sketch of the whole house, of the whole apartment that we were in. And so I sketched it out. And then you asked me, I got tasked with going and making the notification to the father of the child. And I guess mom and dad were separated, whatever. But I remember you being the detective on there, and normally you're so goofy and so making fun of everything and having a good laugh at everything. And you were as serious as you ever get there. And I was like, whoa, this must be a big deal. Because, I mean, sure, there's a child has passed away, that it is a big deal. But for you to, because you would see people on various calls where they're just keeping the levity going, because it's, that's just the way a police officer handles with some heavy stuff. But yours was, you were very serious about it. And I said, wow, that's very unlike him. So when I caught that glimpse of you being that way, I started noticing, okay, this is something I need to pay attention to. What is he doing? And so I started watching what you were doing and how you were doing it, how you were interacting with people. And so that had a big, a big bearing on me and how I deal with things and how I look at things sometimes now. Is I think about that specific case and the way that you specifically handled that and the way you were doing it. And I said, there's there's something to be said about that. You can be all these different things, this jokester and this have fun guy and this, um, your job, but here you do your job. This is the part where you're digging your heels in and you're getting it done and you're doing it right. And so, if nothing else, just know that was everything you do. Somebody's watching, and and at some point, it has a um, there's a factor that gets built into the other person that's watching and seeing, maybe it would good for good or for bad. For me, in this case, it was good. I started seeing, okay, this is how there's different ways to do it. But the way that you were handling that made such a big difference for me. Just learning that.
Oh, well, I'm glad I could help break your spirit. There's so many things that you can find humor in, and you find ways to just be funny, and life is funny,
right?
But sometimes it's not funny anymore,
right?
And one of the things about working homicides is, unlike a serious assault or robbery, you have a victim who's a witness who testifies on their own behalf.
Yeah.
And in a homicide, you are their voice.
Right.
And it's a thing to be revered. It's a thing to be taken very seriously. And with regard to the death of a child, there's nothing worse.
No,
there's nothing. And when you're a dad with young kids or a mom with young kids, you know those scenes, it rips your heart out, and it fills what's probably already a full cup with more crap that doesn't belong in there.
Right.
And at times it's too much, and it's overwhelming. And so I think that's where, for me, that formula of exercise and fellowship and prayer and talking, and those things were a crucial element of what kept this motor limping into the finish line at that point in time.
Right.
So, in all this time, we're talking about just kind of working through the process of getting closer to a relationship with God.
Right.
And for me, not really growing up in the church, but just kind of understanding, I want to be closer to God, and I want to know God, and pursuing God. That was something that was my personal walk and my personal calling, I guess. And so with the help of a lot of people that helped kind of show me the directions, just kind of looked into church and then listening to messages and reading the Bible and getting into, okay, there's a difference between religion and relationship.
Right.
And I don't mean to downgrade religion in any sense. I think there's a lot of sacred purpose for those, for whatever somebody's belief is, but I respect all those. But for me, it was like, to get to this place of personal relationship where you're walking and dialoguing with God, the creator of the universe, you can talk to and say, hey, what do you got for me today, God?
Right.
Oh, this is a dilemma. This is a negative thing, but I'm going to thank you for it. I'm going to walk through it. And I know you have a reason for it.
Right.
Or something cool that happens, and it's obviously a thank you, or you pray for something and you get a yes. You pray for something, you get a no. Or you pray for something, you get a wait.
Right. Yeah.
All those things you learn as kind of a baby Christian and walk into a relationship. And so I'm praying, Lord, I want to be closer to you.
Sure.
And so you say, Lord, I want to be closer to you, in sincere prayer. And God says, okay, watch this.
I'm going to pull you a little bit then. Yeah.
I'm going to make you so desperate for me, you'll want nothing else in life, but it's going to hurt, So we'd gone through our newborn baby, and we're holding our newborn baby girl, and she's a beautiful angel. And doc says, sis, I'm on a test and we need to get her in. And I won't go into details, but essentially through some desperate prayer, we saw an answer to prayer with health. And could you say, thank you, God, if you didn't get that answer to desperate prayer? Could you trust God through that? Right. The answer at that time was no. I'd be mad and I'd blame God, or I'd find a way to, just coincidence things and be angry, but God answered our prayer with mercy and grace. I mean, we didn't deserve, and she's healthy and healthy to this day.
That's awesome. That's cool.
So pray again. Lord, I want to be closer to you, Lord. I want to be closer to you, Lord. Next thing you know, there's a breast cancer scare in our household, and it's very serious. Have a friend that we all know that lost his wife to the very same thing down there, and very scary. And it's moving to this test, to the next test, meeting with the surgeon, and this is really scary. And can't eat, can't sleep, can't drink, can't think of anything else other than this is the worst case scenario. And praying, and home group praying to the point of praying for miraculous healing with hands on. I mean, just we're saints are on board with this prayer chain. We're just really just in prayer with God, in conversation with God, in dialogue with God. And we went from we're going to cut to the next day or two meeting with the surgeon saying, there's nothing there.
Really?
I don't know what happened. There's no way to explain it. It's just not there.
Test after test is saying that, yes, there's here, and it's growing, it's getting worse. And then all of a sudden, like that, nothing.
Yeah. And so we have witnessed a miracle, but we say, well, that's cool. It's probably some coincidence or some work of nature of, just dissolving something that was whatever. I mean, things happen, right? It's just a human body and they're designed to heal. So you find a way to God-sense that off or blame things off to, thank you, God, but it's possible it could have been, anything, give the credit, some skepticism.
Sure.
And then back to praying, and it's like, Lord, I want to be closer to you, Lord. I want to be closer to you, Lord. And oh, Mike, you don't get it, do you? He says. And so my family comes to visit me at work, where it's like Friday, so I'm just hanging out at work. Family comes to see me. I'm cool to see the family. It's Good Friday before Easter, and in fact, it was about 10 years ago this month.
Okay.
And my son has got anaphylaxis to peanuts. He's definitely allergic to peanuts. We've learned, and he at this point is about 8 years old. And for Easter, they had received some candies, and some of the candies got through that were cross-contaminated. And he ends up having an allergic reaction to peanut in this candy. And he begins the stages of anaphylaxis. About the time we snatch him up and throw him in the mommy missile and start rolling to the emergency room. And I'm calling ahead. We're going in the back door. I'm running him in, and he's getting in as he's essentially going through full-blown respiratory arrest, push and cardiac arrest. He's on his third or fourth EpiPen shot at this point. He basically codes out at the point they finally get his airway before it closes up. This respiratory therapist and the doctors, there's just teams of people working around my son, and I don't have anywhere to stand in this room. I'm just trying to get out of the way, and they're working on my son, and I'm just desperate. And you feel like electricity is running through your heart, like you're holding on to like a power line that's just slowly like killing you and making you, just exist, but not live. And it's surreal. And watching the color disappear from your child, seeing the heart rate line on your child as they start to put him in a coma, to breathe for him, to beat his heart for him, to call in specialists for him. And there's people piling up in this room that are trying to save this little boy. They summon basically the Panda team, the OHSU life flight team,
right,
to pick him up to take him to OHSU. We're falling apart. We're crazy, chaos, and scared to death, and praying desperately, Lord, 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 please save my son. Please save my son. To just agonizing tears.
right.
I mean, you talk about stuff's not fun anymore. This is the hardest, most terrible thing that I'd ever endured in my life at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Is watching what looks like my son dying in front of me.
Right.
And we jump onto an ambulance, and we got to take an ambulance from Grants Pass to Merlin, to go to Merlin Airport, to take an airplane from Merlin to Hillsboro, an ambulance from Hillsboro to OHSU.
Right.
And I remember, we'd all been doing karate up until this point, and I'm still wearing my detective gear in this little tiny plane. I got to ride in this little tube of an airplane. There was a Panda team and a doctor and a nurse inside. And the only thing I can hold on to in this plane is my son's foot, his bare foot. And if you know anything about karate and you're holding a kid's bare foot, you're holding the athlete's foot probably.
Right. Yeah.
so I'm holding this little chubby Fred Flintstone foot, praying desperately for Lord to work a miracle, in the name of Jesus, just please help my son,
Right.
And I don't deserve this. I don't, there's nothing that I've done that has earned a miracle of this grace, Lord, but just because you're good.
Right.
And I know firsthand from being a major crime detective, what it looks like when things don't go the parents' way.
Yeah.
It's hard to know what you know when you have kids and see what you've seen when you have.
All right, we're back. We're here. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. I thought I was boring you.
No. The internet decided I need a break. So.
Yeah, no problem.
So you're saying that
where we leave off.
You were saying that you don't deserve this miracle.
Yeah. So just knowing what the worst case scenario is, because you've seen it played out in front of your own eyes with other families, I think is a blessing and a curse. But we get there, they're some of the best doctors in the world, and they're able to restore him from his coma and get him breathing in his heart and get the anaphylaxis down through all kinds of different stuff and save his life. Where my wife had driven up with the baby, my middle daughter. She went to stay with family. My brother-in-law drove my wife Melissa up, and they got there. And what's funny is like wildfire, this prayer chain of friends and family and strangers took off during all of this. That was like profoundly impacted to strangers during this time. And I remember Chaplain Victor came up, Archie came up, as I was heading out the door to go on the plane. I think Ryan handed me $1,000 for expenses that might come up or something like that. He's like, here, let me do something for you. He just hands me cash. I was like, okay, I don't know if the vending machine will take hundreds, but thank you, brother. It's just, he didn't care. It's just love. He wanted to do something.
Right.
Of course, our home group and our church family are just like sending this out, and it was pretty amazing. So Matthew's now starting to wake up. It's the next day, I'm the only one awake in the room. Nurses were coming back in every so often to kind of just make sure things were going on. I think there was like TV on in the room. It's maybe Pirates of the Caribbean or Rambo or Indiana Jones or some show like that's on. And Matthew starts to open his eyes, and I'm holding his hand. He's kind of halfway on his bed, and he's like, "Hey, Dad, hey, son, you're okay." And you know where you are? Well, I'm in the hospital. Yeah, you're in the hospital. Do you remember what happened? He says, "Well, yeah, I had to get a shot, because you remember the EpiPen. He hated needles.
Right.
I mean, who doesn't, right?
Right.
Especially kids." And I asked him, I said, "What else do you remember?" And then he said something that changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "God held my hand."
Wow. Wow, that is huge. This, just for him having gone through that, had no idea, and just knew that he was all right. He was okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you guys are worried and stressed out and scared and
Yeah.
everything. And he's like, I was holding God's hand. I'm fine.
Yeah. And here's your answer to prayer. You've never been closer to God.
Right. Right. If you want to get closer to me, let me bring your children close to me first, and then you're going to follow.
Oh boy. So, you think you have faith, or you think you know what you know, and that's the point where you know what you know what you know.
Yeah.
And it's unshakable. It's unbreakable. It's forever.
That's fantastic. And he's good to go, huh? He's good to go now.
He's good to go. We got him home, and we got him healthy, and he's set to go to college this fall.
See,
it's crazy.
That's awesome. Yeah.
What a story. So it was amazing. It's our family's story, but I think a lot of the people on the prayer chain and the people that got to experience that God story too, and that was pretty special.
Right.
And just knowing that of you think like, what if I lost my son?
Yeah.
I know where he'd be.
Yeah.
And I don't want to think about that. That's the worst thing a parent can ever contemplate, of course, but it's like that knowledge of knowing, yeah, God, you're real.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And there's it's beyond faith. It's that, Hebrews 11, you're sure.
Yeah. Exactly.
So this walk now puts like this walk puts you in a place where, okay, now I know, okay, what's next is, okay, now you're going to learn about obedience. You're going to go where I send you.
I've got you. I got the
yeah. So
what happened?
So what happened? Then comes the end of 2012 when I get a job offer to a job I wasn't looking for.
And you weren't applying for or anything.
To leave a job that I love, in a place that I love, that I believe I'll be forever.
Right.
And a house sale, full price offer on a house that's not for sale, within 24 hours of each other. And knowing what we'd been through, and that you ask for eyes to see what God wants you to do and ears to hear what God's telling you. This, like, you have to be closing your eyes and plugging your ears when you start doing those things, to not look at those things as being some direction.
Right.
And so then, out of wisdom, you just say, well, give me some confirmation. Give me some confirmation about, is this really what you want me to do? Is just leave this place? I mean, I'm like the senior major crimes detective, in this fishbowl, and I'm loving SWAT, and family's here, and all of our extended families there. I was a third generation, in Grants Pass. There's no other place to, and I certainly didn't want to be anywhere near Portland. It just wasn't for me, but
Right.
But anyways, got this job offer. Wasn't looking. House sale wasn't on the market, and things lined up, and things went smoothly. And eventually, we ended up in the northern part of the state.
Right.
And there has certainly been trials and tribulations. There's been struggles, of parenting teenagers and the things that come with that. I mean, not just like rebelling, but the world we live in today with mental health concerns and things like that parents genuinely struggle with like no other time in our history.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
worry that you
horrifying
for that. You see all these things that you and we were talking earlier, that whole thing that when we're talking about that SIDS, that that you have a child that age or whatever. And I remember on that call, I had gone home after work and I just held my kids. They were little.
Yeah.
And I just held them. And you see all this crap day in and day out. You see people that are mean. You see people that are nasty. You see people that don't care about other people, and you see people that we see evil. There is evil out there. And then you go to home and you're trying to have this life, and your kids are like, oh, I'm just going to do this. And you're like, you're seeing this writing on the wall, or you've seen the play out in somebody else's life. And you have to be either overly on guard, or you have to be watching the kids and saying, well, no, you're not going to do that. And then they're starting, well, how come? Well, and they want answers.
Yeah.
You can't tell them these stories. You can't tell them this horror that you've seen before. You can just say, all you can say is just trust me. I know what I'm talking about. And so they don't believe, and you're just scared, and you just want to do the right thing and the best thing for your kids.
Sure.
And they think that you're just trying to rain on their parade.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, there's definitely a balance to that. And I think my parents gave me some of the best advice. I remember calling them many years ago after we'd moved up, and my son said, something like, I hate you, like little kids do sometimes.
Right.
It's like, oh, it's like an arrow in the heart, hearing your kids say something like that. And I just talked to my parents about it. It's pretty funny. Like, you can still go, like where I'm at, I can still call my parents and get parenting advice, and I'm in my 40s, it's like I should know the answers by now. But my folks, God bless them, they're amazing. My dad and my mom, they said, you know what? Just love them through it.
Yeah. Yep. That's exactly.
I mean, it's so basic. It's so simple. That's what you do. You just love them through it.
Right. You've built the relationship. You just got to let that thing, it's going to be what it is. Yeah. And if you've done everything you can, you've tried to raise them the right way and all these different things, the right things are going to happen. They're going to go through their struggles, their trials, their all this different stuff. But bottom line is they're going to be okay. And you have done everything you can to do that. And all you can think about is the next thing that you're going to have to be able to say the right thing for, or be able to be there and show up and just be there for them, whether you do anything, just coming alongside them and being that tugboat that gets them into port, that sort of thing.
Yep. No, that's just right. And it gets to the point where, it changes as you go on to where, you have these older teenagers, and it's like, I can't fight every battle or tell you how to do everything. But you're like the tour guide, like, a tugboat. I'm here to give you some answers.
Right. Right.
If you want them, I'm not going to live your life for you, but because like I said, you got one heading off to college, you just got to kind of say, well, we've done enough and trust you and go get it.
Yeah.
Love it.
So I remember when you got that, when the word came out that you were leaving, and I'm like, what? How'd that happen? And then somebody else who was working there had applied, and they were doing a background check, if I'm not mistaken, and they were talking to you. And as they're talking to you, they just said, hey, I think we want to hire this guy. And then so they pull you in. And so I thought, holy cow, that's not something that's totally unheard of. But then, I was like, wow, he's actually leaving. And you'd been a staple there, as long as I could remember. And then all of a sudden you're not there anymore. And, but you had such an impact on me that to learn how to be, top cop, which is kind of funny. You don't think of yourself like that, and you never want to be called that because that's a stupid freaking term. But but that's the thing, is there's everybody who's like, oh my gosh, you mean probably the best cop we've got here and all this different stuff is leaving, and that's, sky is falling. But that's not the case. You have things to do. You're going to where the Lord's calling you, and you're trying to do the right thing. And there's so many answers that are saying, yes, you have to go do this. There's no other choice. And you go. And we are now without you in the southern part, and we're trying to figure out, hope things are going great for you. And then, as you maintain those relationships, you actually reached out to me several times, out of nowhere. And I'm like, wow, I didn't think I had that much of an influence or anything like that. And you're like, oh no, I hear about you all the time, and I talk to everybody, and, and I'm like, it's motivating to know that when somebody just reaches out of the blue and says, hey man, I'm thinking about you. Holy cow. That's fantastic, because I didn't think anybody was. And so whatever you're doing, you're doing it right. You go out of your way to be a good man. You go out of your way to be a good person. And
I don't know about that. I would say the same for you, Kevin. You certainly earned your stripes, and you should be very proud of where you're at and all the stuff you've done and how you live your life is a great example. And I was looking for reasons to stay. Believe me, I loved that family, and still love that family, and still consider it family. And not to say that I haven't appreciated where I'm working now, in that great department there, in the family that we inherited when we moved up here. So there's some awesome human beings and characters that get to see them day in, day out. But to leave was scary, and to leave your support system was scary and new. But I remember one day after this, okay, we're leaning towards leaving, give me one of these neon signs that says we have to leave, Lord. If this is really watching, because I don't want it to be like subtle. It's got to be crystal clear, like this has to, and
right.
So we got the follow-up call for this and the follow-up call for that without knocking on doors. It was just, here you go. And things were lining up. And then I remember seeing in detectives, one of the things you do sometimes is find ways to just get up out of your desk and stop looking at the same computer and piece of paper for a while. Because you don't even know what you're writing anymore. You're just staring at the computer too long. So one of the things you do besides eat your fifth lunch of the day would be like go out to the car wash. Just run through, take the car wash, detective whip through the car wash. And that's I would routinely like just go through the car wash, and then you don't just go like condition like white, right? But you stay sharp. But I would crank up the tunes inside the car wash,
right.
And it could be anything from like Metallica to country of something, right. and I had and I would listen to Caleb, or whatever, every now and then too. But I just turned the volume to high.
Yeah.
And as I'm praying, Lord, tell me what to do. I'm like, this is so scary. What is this really what you want me to do, Lord? Is leave everything here and go?
Right.
Because I'm making this decision, and my wife's on board. She's not kicking and screaming. My kids are on board because they're my kids, and they're just going to go where mom and dad go, But
right.
But Melissa sees this for what it is, and she's in the same place, in her walk with the Lord. She's endured everything I had up to this point. So as I crank up the tune, as I'm like having this like cheesy moment to myself of this teary-eyed prayer,
right?
And at the very beginning bar of a starting out song that I just cranked up on the radio is Switchfoot song called "Dare You to Move." And of course the song is not about physically moving in a rider truck,
right?
It's about moving where God wants you to, and being being on board to go where he wants you to go. And that may be in your head or in your heart, but that was was one of those things where you just laugh, like, you know, like, you know, like, Father, you're too good. Oh my goodness.
You knew what was going on. So that's
Yeah.
funny that, everything kind of points that way. So
yeah.
so
And
you're doing that, you make the decision and you guys say, we're going, and you guys move up north, and you're there, and not too long after that. And it's weird because there's been people that have been here and they've left, and, you don't hear much about or whatever, but I guess it's a testament to the relationships that you built. You hear about what everybody's doing, you hear about what you're doing because you developed such a relationship with people here, and I'd say within the week when you got promoted and all these different things, and Mike's doing this and Mike's doing that, and it's like I've followed your career without actively following your career, just because you had developed such a relationship with everybody down here that even if I hadn't talked to you specifically, somebody else that knew you, that you've developed that relationship with, has like, oh yeah, Mikey's doing great, and you're like, holy cow, that is so weird. I guess it's just weird to me that, because there's people that have left and gone other places, and you don't know what they're doing, and Facebook makes it easy, and all these social media makes it easy, but that's not where you start hearing stuff about the people who really have an impact or really worked at making and developing those relationships. And so I think it's huge that you go through all these different things and you become who you are, and yet you maintain who you were throughout all that. There's at no point do you get this giant ego, or do you get this thing where you're better than, you don't have to maintain, and you just get to be you. And I think people like that. People like who you are, and I think that's something that everybody can aspire to. Just be you. Everybody wants to try to impress or be, oh, I want to be like that person. Don't be like somebody else. Be like you. And, I had the biggest thing where I was doing that. I was always trying to be, I'm going to try to be like, or I want to, and there comes a point when you can't care about that anymore. Don't care about what people think. Don't care about whether they like you or not. You're just going to be you. And if you are honest with yourself in who you are and in your convictions, then you don't have to worry about these things, and people are going to like you anyways, because people like a genuine article more than they like some false thing.
Yeah. I think there's something to be said for starting over somewhere else where you haven't grown up, where it's a fresh start. I'm not like the knucklehead that made pizza, or
right.
Or all the other stories that, precede your reputation of grandiose tales of drinking competitions or whatever it is, as you grow up. But several trophies there. But to start over and knowing who you are and your identity. And then another thing is when you don't have, the in-laws, you don't have the parents around, you don't have the friends and family or the home group or the partners that you've worked with, it forces you out of your comfort zone to meet new people, build new relationships, and also to rely on the foundation of your faith, but your marriage.
Yeah.
My wife and I, we've walked this walk together. This summer we will have been married 20 years. And the walk we've walked together and where we are now, and the things we've been through together has made our love and our relationship so deep and so strong,
right?
That it's because of the valleys you walk through. It's because of the that you can count it all joy when you walk through these things,
right?
Right. Because it's for a purpose. It makes you better,
right?
And I know you appreciate that.
I agree with that 100%, because you think, oh my gosh, I'm going to live with the same person for the rest of my life. Yeah, you get to live with the same person, and you chose that person, and you love them at one point for whatever reason. Just remember why you did that. And if you can do that, and not start thinking about all this other stuff, but you focus inward and you focus on building this team that goes out and faces all these adversities together, and then goes and you go and have fun together. You, whether go on vacations or do whatever, that's even more, it's more beneficial, and it's got such a growth to it. And I agree with you 100%. And I have, the way that I have towards, I guess the relationship I have with my wife is similar. I love everything about her and want to be with her, and our relationship is more sound today than it's been, then, I mean, it's always been good. It just gets better. And so I think that's just something to be said. As the longer you're married to the right person, it makes all the world of difference. So.
Yeah, for sure. And you can never go on autopilot. There's a proactive effort that is due upon you. When you have a yard, your yard's going to get weeds in it. You got to get out there and tend to it. So you gotta, and I know that I'm preaching the choir here, but you can't ignore it. You can't neglect your marriage. You can't have your identity be your profession.
Right.
Which has been a big and struggling dilemma, over the many years, is to understand I'm a servant of Christ. I'm a husband. I'm a father, and I'm a law enforcement officer. And you can approach that as a ministry if that's how you feel as well in that regard. But for me, there's no greater honor or person to be or thing to be than a loving husband.
Yeah.
Than a strong husband.
I agree.
And father.
I think that all those things you're talking about is just servanthood. You're talking about being a servant of Christ, but then you're a servant of your wife. You're a servant of your children. You're a servant of these people that you're helping. And a servant isn't somebody who's a slave and just does everything and is downtrodden and all this different stuff. But, in those relationships, you're the person who is willingly doing for others. You're willingly giving to others, and you're willing to sacrifice time and effort and money and, your own dreams or whatever for other people, for other things, for your wife, for your kids, for people,
You said it. That is okay. What somebody ever asked you, what's the secret? Well, there's no secret, but you're about as close as you can get to it with what you touched on, and that's the agape.
Right.
We're so wired as human beings to do something for somebody else for something in return.
Right.
Right. But when can you get to that part where you can genuinely do something for someone else with no regard for yourself, no expectation of something for yourself? Your whole podcast is that premise. Nobody out here is trying to promote their book or get their name out there.
Right.
You're just telling people stories for who they are. Some are almost anonymous. It's just it's so amazing, and it's agape.
Right.
What that it's like in Hebrew. There's so many different ways to say the word love. Like the philos is like a brotherly love. Like familial love. Eros is the romantic love, but agape is this God love that we're capable of giving as human beings. Is fairly unique. We're amazing creatures that can do this and do something for somebody else for zero in reward. There's no physical, mental reward for it.
Right.
Here, at least here on earth.
Right.
And I think as young husbands, that is an everyday struggle, for many young men. It's like, I'll do this for you, but really, I mean, this has got to be a partnership. Like I should get this out of this.
What am I going to get out of it? Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And when you can get past that, you're
Yeah.
going to make it,
Yeah.
you're
Exactly.
going to make it. Yeah.
And that's the whole thing that I tell, and I mentioned this in a last podcast was, the joy or the reward you get for serving another person without any regard to what you're going to get in return. Just you go out, you go serve somebody, you go do something, you go, pull weeds in your elderly neighbor's, front yard or something like that. She comes home and realizes, oh my gosh, all the weeds are gone. You don't even have to go take credit for it. You just go serve it. You go see how somebody feels about something, that sort of thing. Maybe they don't even know that it was you, that thing that you feel like you did right. And the Lord is looking at you and like, yes, you're getting it. You're getting what I'm trying to say. And so by doing that with your kids, you're not expecting, what are you expecting as a return for your kids, for giving everything, for sacrificing everything for your kids? They're not going to grow up and necessarily just be gajillionaires and just start, okay, Dad, thanks for all that stuff. And thanks for putting, all that wisdom into me. And here's your share. It rarely ever works that way. There's people want their kids to grow up to be great people, and they want to see the smiles on their face, and they want to see the joy in their heart and being good people. And that's enough of a reward. Well, that's all we can expect in this world is just go out, give to somebody else and see the joy on their face and the happiness and the peace that they have at that time. And so I think that's huge. And I guess that's one reason why I do the podcast, because some people have so many testimonies that they can give. People have so many stories that they can give, and everybody wants to just, well, I'm not. No, you are, because the motivation and inspiration, and I know I said I don't like using those words, but when it comes from the outside in, that develops your discipline. But your motivation and your inspiration from somebody else makes all the difference. You can take that, you discipline yourself to now give back and become more and be better and serve others and all these things that I've been saying since day one. But that is the ultimate thing is trust yourself that when you give back, you're building yourself, but you're building everybody else, and just make yourself less will actually make yourself more. So, and just take, like you said, with Ryan, he would always just go and always put everybody else high and put everybody else above himself. And he didn't want any of the accolades, but I've told him this, he's one of my top 5 favorite people on this planet. And he, when he comes back and says, that he thinks higher of me than I ever thought he would, that sort of stuff. There's a give and take that you don't realize that somebody does, because everybody's so busy looking out or looking in and worrying about what everybody else is thinking instead of actually how it is. So
we waste a lot of energy worrying about what other people think.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's certainly there's reason to be mindful and courteous to others and respectful to them, but I think I've wasted a good portion of my life worrying about what others think, you talked about self-esteem when you started out today, it's just struggling with that, how you see yourself,
Right.
And at some point it's just like you are the rock that life tumbled you through, and take it or leave it. Don't care. I know who I am, and I'm just, when you're a dad, you don't care what you look like. You don't care what you're, you're just gonna show up in sweats and
sandals and socks,
embarrass your kids, and that's fun. Those are the fun things, know. Right. Pick up your kids' friends and crack one off in the car. Just,
something dying here. Yeah, it did.
Yeah, this is the good stuff.
But but I'll tell you, when they get older and they look back and because this happened with my son and my wife, and he's in the military, and he calls her up and he goes, I want to apologize, and he's 23 or whatever at this point when he calls, and I want to apologize, and she's like, what are you talking about? He's like, I was wrong for who I was when I was a kid, when I was 15, whatever, when I was just a talk back punk, And he goes, I was wrong for what I did. I was wrong for how I did it. And I want to apologize. You guys did everything that you could have. You tried to always instill the right thing in me, and you had me do chores, and you had me do all these things, and you were right. And I want to apologize for doing. It's like he had gone through some kind of therapy, and he had to go back and make amends, or something like that.
Yeah.
But he had gone through the military and learned some lessons about, what is required of you as an adult or as a person, a human being. And he learned these lessons, and he realized, oh, I can't do that. I can't be a jerk. And I need to apologize to the people that I love the most. And he called my wife up and told her this, and she's bawling on the phone, and she's just like, oh my gosh. And she couldn't wait for me to get home. And she goes, hang on. I don't understand what you're saying. Hold on a second. Wait. Slow down just a second. And so, got it cleared up. And, you have just such more of a respect for that little boy that has become a human man, that is an adult and is, responsible. And that is our job as parents. And so you go in and you become this servant for these people, and that you still do that. It's like the same reason your parents answer the phone for you at 40 years old to help give you information. They're still your servant. They still love you and want to help you become the better man that you are. So, I think it never stops. I think our servanthood should continue on until the day we die, just wanting to give back and give more to other people. So,
yeah. No, and I certainly there's days where you're just kind of a slug, or self-indulged, and
right.
And so I think being mindful of that, just kind of being that, like I said before, the anchor or the compass of just what who you are, what you're supposed to do, and you just do it out of the motivation, out of the I know what it takes to be who I want to be, and how I feel when I act a certain way, and you just do that.
Yeah.
When my son gives me that call someday, I'm gonna be pretty happy. I'll call you and let you know.
Yeah, you want to get a sit rep on that one.
So yes.
So awesome. We've been on here for quite a bit, and we could just keep going on and on about how life is, handed us whatever it's given us, and we can, I'm willing to fight it back or still learn who I am. And, because there's still that point where you're trying to figure out who you are. And if you're doing that, you're trying to figure out who you are, just do what is natural to you by serving other people. And that is going to be your ultimate test to being able to understand what life is and what life gives you. That if you just be yourself, people are going to accept you for who you are. If you're that person and you're honest, and I mean honestly honest with yourself, that you can look back and say, I did that right because it was the right thing to do, not because somebody was expecting this of me or somebody told me to. But you have the integrity to do what's right based on your own discipline, because of what somebody else motivated and inspired you to do, and what other tools somebody implanted in you to go be a better person. Then you will be able to go beyond what you thought you could do. And people are going to love you for who you are. You may not be the most popular. You may not be the best or number one top cop like Mr. Mikey here, but you will be the best at who you are. You're going to be the best you. So Mikey, do you have anything you kind of want to close on? You want to one final thing you want to add?
Oh, I thank you very much for what you're doing, Ken. I think you have a good thing going here, and there's a lot of great people that have things to say, and excluding myself. I'm honored to share the microphone with some of the folks you've had on, and I appreciate you.
Yeah.
I would encourage folks to be introspective about where they're going. Do they like who they are? Is this why they're on earth? Is there more to your time on earth than what you're doing now? And if there is, fix it.
Yeah.
Get your foundations in place. You're not what the world tells you you are. That's a lens you look through. It's not the lens you look to. And just know that there's a better way to live than worrying about what other people think, than getting stressed out by watching the news and getting angry, by seeing the world fall apart all around you. There is agape to be shared with your circle, with what's in front of you, with your customers or your citizens at work. It's that dialogue with your creator. That's, what do you have for me today?
Right.
And live it with excitement, smile, enjoy the moments.
There you go.
Love each other.
There you go. Well, thank you, Mike. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate your awesome words and your words of wisdom that you give out, your willingness to give and be a servant to others. And you can't find that in a lot of people, and it's appreciated, and it's noticed, and you're going to continue to be blessed for it, and you're going to continue to be persecuted for it, and you're going to be continued to be, life is going to throw what it's going to throw at you, and you just got to continue to be yourself and do what's right and what is right, and as do we all. So I, with that in mind, I want to thank all of our police officers who go out there every day and just go be yourself, and just are able to provide the place for us to be, a place for us to live our lives. And I know all this political stuff going on that is throwing, fireballs at us. It is not the way it is. There are more people that support and love and rely on the police for what we are able to give than there are the talking heads in the news and all this other stuff. So continue to do what is right, because what's right, and continue to provide us with that safe haven that we're able to live in and maintain and be a part of. Because without you, we wouldn't be able to live in the society and the communities that we do. To our firefighters, same thing. Without you guys going out there risking your necks every day for us, we'd be up a creek without a paddle. And then to our nurses, doctors who are always there making sure we're okay, thank you. And to our vets who make sure that we have a United States of America to live in, that we can live here and we can be a part of this great country in which we all live, and we're able to have these things and live this way of life because of the sacrifices you make. So thank you guys, everybody that's out there on the front lines fighting for us, and taking all that. Take care of yourself, take care of your families, serve others. It will be what it is. So for Mr. Mikey, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much. I have been Ken Frownfelter, and this has been the What's a Hero podcast. We are clear.